You can do it. We'll call the city council work session to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore.
Present.
Felder. Hayter.
Here.
Stillgrave.
Here.
Vining.
Excused.
Germaine.
Excused.
Mayor Clark.
Here. So we have a work session this evening. Manager Robinson, I think there's a couple items, so I'll just turn it over to you and get started.
Yes, Your Honor. The first will be a presentation from our Department of Public Safety, Director Tolstadt and Mike Duchesne from Flock Safety in discussion over our purchase of the Flock camera systems for our city. And I'd like to have Chad come up.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, Chad Tolstead, Director of Public Safety. Just do a quick, brief introduction. I've had a chance to speak with each of you concerning the Flock camera system. As a reminder, this is a part of like the camera implementation we went out to set forth some time ago with the Meraki cameras, and then we kind of pumped the brakes on phase 2, knowing that the Flock cameras were coming as well. So this, I would consider this somewhat of a phase 2 of the camera project. I'll now bring Mike Duchesne up for you, who'll go into a much more detailed what the camera system does and what it can do for the city of Monroe here. Mike?
Thank you. Hi, nice to meet everyone. Mike Duchesne, used to live in the city, now live in LaSalle Township, but I gotta apologize. I'm gonna go through it as quick as possible. Stop me at any point and ask questions. I just got a coach pitch game to get to, so. So first slide, I threw some stats on here, just kind of talking about the nature of policing today, especially compared to like 10, 20 years ago. What we see national averages and across the country is that violent crime rates are up and clearance rates are down. The most impactful stat to me on this slide is that 70% of crimes involve a vehicle. So why is that important? How can we help solve crime here in Monroe? So what our devices are is they're fixed cameras that are mounted on a pole. We do all the permitting, all the installation, maintenance on them, and they're capturing images of the backs of vehicles. So it's not capturing pictures of people or any information about a person. It's just objective images of the rears of vehicles. The reason that we get an image kind of like you're seeing here, or maybe at a different angle when the cameras are mounted on the side of the road, is if a criminal were to take their license plate off, we can still search by what we call the vehicle fingerprint, which is proprietary to Flock, like the make of the vehicle, the color of the vehicle, the type, so like pickup truck or SUV, to help try to either proactively or reactively help solve crime. So we integrate with databases such as the NCIC, the National Center for Information Center, or Crime Information Center, Amber Alert, custom hot lists that the agency can set. Maybe they have a vehicle that they're investigating that was, given to them, a description from an eyewitness. They could put in that hot list, and then they're going to be alerted when that vehicle passes by another one of their cameras. So what's important here is, again, it's not facial recognition. It's not identifying people. It's not used for traffic enforcement or doing any speed or radar detection. It's just taking objective images of the rears of vehicles. On a daily basis, if it's not a stolen vehicle, it's not a wanted vehicle, these images, they're stored in the cloud, in the AWS government cloud, and they're never seen. They're never brought to the light of day. The only time they're ever going to be seen is if it is a stolen vehicle and NCIC has put an alert out on it. So then the PD will get an alert, or if they have input the vehicle for some type of investigation, and then they're going to be alerted that the vehicle passed one of the cameras. Any question about that, or kind of how it works? Okay. So again, I mentioned at Flock, we have several different kind of internal departments. We have a full permitting team, full installation team, and techs that live here in the state that will go out, they deploy and install these cameras. So I'll show you kind of where we're proposing the cameras based upon the city limits and just trying to get traffic coming into the city. So that way, if it is a wanted vehicle or a stolen vehicle or a vehicle with a stolen plate, the PD is alerted before they get really into the downtown or into the heart of the city. So maybe they could go make a controlled stop on the outer perimeter before they come in and, potentially commit crime here. This is a list of the agencies as of last month that are currently using flock safety. There's a couple more that I need to add that just joined on at the beginning of this month. Obviously the Sheriff's Department have 4 cameras down at the corner of Stearns and Secor. Several in Wayne County, Oakland County, Macomb County. Currently, Adrian, Michigan, and Lenawee County has cameras. No one in Washtenaw County right now. And the Sheriff's Department and Milan are the only 2 in Monroe County. So real quick, just want to touch on, you may have seen this in the news in the last couple of weeks. Homeland Security and Taylor PD worked together. It was the same week that the draft was in Detroit. So it was 3 child predators were arrested by utilizing not only the LPRs, the license plate readers that we're talking about, but Taylor actually has 27 of our live video cameras that integrates into the software as well. They've deployed them at all their parks. So they host the Little League World Series every year, and so they wanted several real-time cameras up. And actually, they utilize the Condors, which are the real-time video, and the Falcons are LPRs to help solve these crimes. And then from this, they had 15 potential adult human trafficking victims that came forward in conjunction with this Homeland Security investigation. Even more recent, you may have seen 2 weeks ago, so the liquor store in Ida was robbed, and Sheriff Goodenough mentioned that they helped use, so not only cameras that they have at Stearns and Secor, but what's great is all those agencies that I mentioned, Monroe can actually choose who they want to share cameras with, and if they want to allow different agencies to be able to have access to their cameras. That's beneficial because all those agencies, it's not just the cameras that Monroe's looking to get, but if something were to happen here and it traveled south down to Toledo, Toledo is one of our best customers. The university has cameras all throughout all of Toledo. Maumee's coming on board, Sylvania's coming on board. So we have a ton of cameras even south of here, let alone all of those that you saw in Michigan. So what you see on the map here in blue, those are the city cameras as they stand today, except for 2 of them. 2 of them were up. One was on Monroe Street Bridge, and the other one was over at St. Mary's Park. And if this gets approved, the yellow cameras are our real-time live cameras, and live and recorded cameras. So those are positioned, you see, at Munson Park, Carnes Park. We have St. Mary's Park. We have the Monroe Street Bridge. And then the last one is at, I think, North Dixie and Winchester area. So with doing that, we can put one at St. Mary's Park and one on Monroe Street and relocate 2 of the existing cameras you have. What's great about our software is we can ingest the video you have through your current cameras. So it's not just money you paid towards that and you have to go to one software, go to a different software for Flock. We can actually pull those in and have them all on the same platform. So it's going to make everyone's life a lot easier, whether it's the police, whether it's dispatchers. They don't have to go to multiple different screens to kind of see all of this. The red cameras, those are the Falcons, the license plate readers. So what we traditionally try to do is set up a perimeter of where it catches vehicles coming into the city. Again, you see at the northern border there, cameras on Monroe Street, cameras on Telegraph. So as vehicles come into the city limits, if it is a stolen vehicle or maybe that vehicle is wanted, the PD would be alerted that those vehicles are coming into the city limits, and they could potentially, just kind of canvass the area or stop that vehicle in a controlled manner. I talk a lot about the technology and what it can do. Again, I just really like to take the time to reiterate what the technology is not, right? It's not tied to any personal identifiable information. So if for some reason the PD didn't have a license plate, but they knew that a white pickup truck was involved in a robbery, they could look in that time frame on that date for a white pickup truck, and the images that surface are going to be any white pickup trucks that hit on either that particular camera or their cameras in that given time frame that they're searching. So as they go through that, it's not going to be tied and say, this white pickup truck belongs to, Jane Doe and she lives at this address. It's just giving you objective evidence of that image of that vehicle. It's not used, again, for traffic or parking enforcement. Our images and the live video, they have a 30-day retention policy. And that's something that's very important to us at Flock, is this isn't something that's kept forever. After 30 days, it cannot be recovered. It gets deleted, and the data is owned by the agency. We don't own that data. We can't sell that to any third-party vendor or anybody. So that is owned by the individual agency. Again, all the data is stored in the AWS cloud. It's encrypted from end to end, so it's securely stored. In order to conduct a search, so each individual officer will have a login. And once they're in the system, if they go to conduct a search, they have to put a search reason into the text box. So they can't just go in and conduct searches left and right. A lot of agencies will draft an LPR policy. So what's kind of prohibited uses and accessible uses of the software. And since they're individually logged in when they conduct a search, a lot of agencies will say you have to put a case number in or some type of reason on why you're searching for this vehicle. What that does is it creates an auditable trail. So any of that can be brought up on a quarterly meeting or yearly meeting just to see how many searches were conducted. There's an outcomes tab in there. So if this vehicle was used in a crime and you were able to search for it and it was help solve a crime, that can all be recorded, and you can kind of track, solve stories or metrics to see, are you getting a good ROI on the technology? So I showed the one story about Taylor. I was actually on a call with their lieutenant earlier today, and we're going to be doing a press release the 29th of May, just kind of talking about the technology they have outside of Flock and Flock and how they integrate. So they use several of the technologies that the PD has here as well, and we can integrate with a lot of their technologies. So that way it's not just money that's competing against each other, but we try to work with some of the top different vendors across law enforcement. So that's all I have for you today. I know it's a lot of information. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask or let me know.
Sure. We'll see if there's any questions. Brian, and then we'll go along the way.
Thanks for the presentation.
Yep.
First question would be on the camera locations, knowing that there's a potential that Elm Avenue, the exit there may be closed, more than likely will be at I-75. Is that a good location for that, knowing that exit's probably going to be closed, and maybe Detroit and North Dixie might be a better location?
Mm-hmm. Just kind of moving it west a little bit. So if anyone came off that.
A little bit north and
Yeah.
a little bit north.
Yeah, north and west. So the sheriff's
they're
department,
movable, correct?
yeah, so they're movable. And depending on, so I mentioned we do all the permitting and all the install. They are movable. It just depends too. The biggest issue is we try to figure out who and where, because we have to permit, right? Whether it's an MDOT right away, a city or county maintained right away. So we just got to kind of know that and go through that process. The sheriff's department, I'm working with them right now on getting more cameras. So I know North Dixie was one location they were looking at down La Pleasance Road and in some certain areas. And so that's where we tried to, if in a perfect world, if each city and agency covered their inbound cameras, the neighbor inbound cameras would work as your outbound cameras. So like Frenchtown Township and Monroe Township, they would be kind of working in conjunction. So we try not to duplicate any efforts and kind of make you spend more money than you need to.
One last
Sure,
question
Brian.
would be, you mentioned that you need to have a reasoning for using the clock as an officer. How long does it usually take to put that input in?
So basically when you log in, the software screen, there's a couple main tabs that are used: search, alerts, and the map function. The search function, in order to actually conduct a search, you're just staring at a blank screen. There's no images, there's nothing that you're seeing. So to actually pull images, you have to put in that search reason. It's a mandatory field. So once you put that in and then just hit search, then it it conducts the search.
What I'm trying to say is it's not going to cause a lapse in the officer being able to, do what he has to do.
No. So, and it just depends, right, how it's being used. Typically, this search function is more of an investigation, like detective type role. The alerts is going to be a little bit more proactive for patrol out on the streets. Yep. Yep.
Other questions? Mike?
Yeah, with the 30-day retention, just some thoughts were going through my head. We have maybe some repeat crimes that we think somebody is repeated, but we don't have the information because we weren't able to retain that information. Is there anything that can be done about that?
Yeah, so there are some states that mandate you have to have like a year long, I think New Jersey's one of them, there's a couple others, retention policy. We have allowed for that. It is a charge just because we pay for all the cellular data and storage of that. There is a small charge for that per location, so it can be done. From what we've seen, the ranges in certain companies range from, there's some that say like 3 days is their retention policy, and we've seen up to 5 years. So there's kind of a sweet spot in between there. But from what we've seen, the 30-day limit is pretty on par with even detectives trying to go back and see something. When you get outside that, you're really looking at kind of colder cases and everything. So it is an option to extend to that, but there's just a cost to do that.
And is there any way, or is the technology there, say there's a robbery, we don't have a suspect, a few days later, there's another one. Is there a way to track those cameras and say, hey, which vehicles were in
Yeah.
those areas at the same time?
Great
or
question.
a roundabout?
Yep. So there's a couple different search features that we have to where you can search, either do individual searches of this date, this location, this time frame, and then go back this date and this location. And there's some that you can do multiple locations at the same time, conduct the search, and it's going to only show you like vehicles that were in those two areas, right? And that plays the same with sharing with other agencies. So if someone committed a crime here and drove up to Taylor and committed a same crime, stolen vehicle, and maybe a robbery, you'd be able to search, and if they hit in those locations, then you would know that. Yep.
Other questions? Andrew?
You would mention a data sharing with the existing camera systems that we have, which I think are over, that's Wi-Fi data, correct? Is the protocol that they communicate over?
Cellular, not Wi-Fi.
They're cellular, not Wi-Fi. I'm sorry, these are our current network. Because I thought we had to install hotspots for,
Yeah, there's cellular cards. Each of our cameras now are cellular.
okay. So everything would be on the same protocol.
Yeah, so the way that we ingest those is one of two ways. Depending on the brand, if we have a direct integration, we can bring them in stream by stream. If it's an entire VMS package, we can ingest the entire VMS server into the software and display them that way. So a couple different ways to do it, either individually or as a bundle of streams.
Yeah, because I know that you were saying that the system doesn't do any facial recognition. That's not what this was built for. But at the moment that suspect or whatever scene it is gets into a car, okay, now we can track it. But how does that handoff happen where we can say, okay, this person, this vehicle, now follow?
Yeah, so essentially the live cameras that you guys have, right? It's a video camera. So obviously whatever you see it get into a vehicle. And like if we were to use example like downtown Monroe here, and someone headed west, going towards Monroe Street from like Macomb Street, and was seen on one of your vehicles, then you could, if you were able to see the license plate, great, or you could search maybe the make and color of that vehicle and then see if that vehicle passed by one of the LPRs. Then from there, you could get the license plate and then search the license plate and do a broader search.
Gotcha. So well, that's probably more on the technical side of things. So I was also reading no parking enforcement, no DMV registration, no connection to third-party stuff. I understand that might be ethically complicated for a private company, but these are governmental records that our officers are already using all the time. Parking enforcement is something we do on a day-to-day basis. So in integrating with the departments that you work with, is it the fact that you don't want to own that data, you don't want to have that capability? or you just don't want to be in charge of it, but are okay if that utility is there.
So you're saying like utilizing it in conjunction with the existing softwares you guys have for those things?
Yeah, because I mean, our officers are already going around now and checking on with plate. Now, what we do when we find that, whether it's a courteous reminder or whether it's a, ticket, I'll leave
Correct,
that up to
yeah.
the law enforcement professionals, but
Yeah, it's more or less just kind of referring to it's not going to alert you for, any vehicle that's been parked for a certain amount of time or anything tied like that. Now, can it be used to kind of help bridge the gap in some of the things that you have? I mean, probably, but just intended uses for it. It's not going to solve those type of crimes or it's just a still image of the vehicle. So what you do from there is, whatever the PD needs to do to kind of enforce the laws.
okay.
Other questions? So Mike, just a couple questions. I think some of them have been asked already. I think going down the line that Andrew was on, I think about data, and I think way back when there's plate readers and you drive through and you just read all the plates and, but in your ethical screen in the very beginning, I talk about no people, no faces, no speed, traction, enforcement, indiscriminate evidence. So just your definition.
Mm-hmm. Of what indiscriminate
Yeah,
evidence?
just so we everybody understand.
So it's just taking a picture of a vehicle. So it's not telling you that, this vehicle has these type of occupants or has one occupant or the gender of the occupants or the race or anything.
Right.
It's just indiscriminate objective evidence of here's the vehicle, here's the location, here's the time it was there.
Thanks. If I understand the use of this is there's been an occurrence, it could be here, could be elsewhere, and then by plates that are that this type of image is received, you could timeline it, and that's how they've had some success because then they could find a plate of the car, type of car. I get that. The search box, I think, was asked. What do you put in? I mean, it has to be, that's an internal policy, I think, when it comes to, because and that's where we have to rely internally on our agency and direction from the director and right on down through what that is for and that it's trackable. So I always think of, you said it was an LPR policy, and I just wrote underneath there important. I think it's important what policies we have internally so we stay on track of what the intent and purpose is, and it doesn't stray off of that to where it's not indiscriminate. And I think that's clear for me that it is. It's kind of like the checks and balances. It's what do we have internally and under the direction of our public safety director, what that is and who is in the person that becomes responsible for reviewing that if there's a question, and then how we deal with that internally. Because the last thing we want, I think, is to have an investigative tool that is just collecting data that's not what we should be doing, but the data that is important to the activity, the vehicle might be, as you said, just the plate. I think Mike's question was good about the thing about the 30-day deletion. I think it's important that how long we keep things is also going to give us support or concerns when we talk about residents and their thoughts. Where's my data? What's it being used for? Where's it at? Those are all great questions. I think you answered that. I think the retention policy behind is also an internal item that while the public safety director and the department will be sharing with us, we as a council then have to also find that comfort of how we're going to manage that for our, not just our residents, but visitors, but also serve the purpose what we want if approved, why we move into this kind of arena for I'll just say investigative benefits for solving crime. Let's see, there's one other note here if I can find it.
If I
Go ahead.
I might add one or two things. So LPR policies, if you guys wanted them as well, we have several samples we could provide just to kind of, as you draft your own. At the bottom on the right, you see it says transparency portal. One thing that we can do, it's free to you guys and something that we set up for several agencies. It's a transparency portal. So just a website that the community could go to and see how is the technology used and how is it not used. So that way if they have questions, they can always go visit it. You asked about like searching after 30 days too. There is, when you conduct a search and if there's a vehicle, maybe it was tagged to a crime or you're still investigating it, you can download that and save it to like an evidence management system. So if you guys use Axon, evidence.com, we integrate directly with that. So it can be saved and you can log like case notes. So that way, if it's a similar crime in a different area, that is logged and saved somewhere as well too.
That's important when we talk about solvability and then things that you later think, well, I wonder if this was, and this would have the ability for that. I think the screen that you have up there is really kind of where I think some of the conversation is about, protecting privacy, but also accountability within the mechanisms that we're going to deploy. And I think it was also brought up about third party, and you had that in your presentation as well. So screen went by fast, but I think it was near 82 communities in the state of Michigan appear to be using this from that screen.
Yeah, right now in the state of Michigan, it's just over 109
Okay.
between. So I work with agencies from Monroe to Lenawee up to Genesee to St. Clair. And then there's another gentleman that covers the rest of the state, and then one gentleman that works with larger agencies, MSP Detroit, Macomb County, Oakland County. So those ones aren't on the list, and then a few of the new ones. So yeah, just over 109 today.
The other part you said I think was important as you were talking is internally is kind of like that review, whether it be quarterly, annually, to look and make sure that somebody's going back and looking and saying, well, this there's not something of concern. I think that's always important as well. You'd rather know that up front than later when you find out that it could have been easily observed just by an internal, I don't know, call it oversight, but internal policy for review. So,
Yep.
Thanks, Mike.
One of the things that I didn't touch on too, so our technology, it's a little bit different than every other company or some other company. There's a couple that do it too. So ours, it's a subscription model. And so what's nice is we just had 2 huge new improvements to our night vision inside. So our night images were really dark, and you couldn't make out some of the vehicle fingerprint, like the make or the type of vehicle. And we were able to enhance the sensors that we have in the existing hardware that's deployed through all these agencies. It didn't cost them a dime. It was uploaded just like when you get a software update on your phone. So it was uploaded for free, just part of the continuous maintenance package of them. And so we've had customers reach out very happy with the improvements. So we want to not only get you as a customer, but also make you happy as a customer and keep you for as long as we can. So
Very good. Any other questions?
Mayor, if I could?
Yes, Director.
A couple of questions that were raised. We absolutely would have a policy. Part of our accreditation program, we would incorporate a policy for it with checks and balances. And with that accreditation comes, we have to provide proofs that we are doing what we're saying within the policy itself. Axon, which we just brought in, has automatic systems that send out reviews for us as well. We would follow a similar protocol for the Flock system to make sure it's being used in the manner in which we intended when we brought it on. A couple of items, the current Meraki camera systems in which we have, by deploying these Condor cameras into some of these areas in which we have the Meraki cameras, we're able to redeploy these Meraki cameras to different areas, which were requested of me. One was specifically in the area front in Winchester, where we had the unfortunate incident of a shooting. A second one over at Labor Park, and then again moving one over to Macomb, while all the while not losing any of the coverage we have here and actually enhancing it, utilizing those Condor cameras. So if approved, we also met with our engineer, my friend and fellow director, Patrick Lewis, to discuss some of the locations, how these would be put up. So we got all the right people meeting up to be able to deploy this project appropriately.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's no other questions. I have to say, when we started having this conversation with the city, and it's well over a decade, it was talking about where we're going to have and how we're going to retain video and other items. And I think just technology alone has brought us into this time frame that you see that you can do it in a much better fashion and also have some greater concerns, safety concerns, both for the information, but also comfort for the public as well, to know that we're doing it for the right reasons. Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Manager Robinson, our next item.
Next item would be the downtown traffic analysis. I know that we had sent that to you a month or so ago to review, and then we resent portions of it for today, and we had it scheduled for a work session item. And today was a good day to bring it. And we have Lauren from OHM and Director Lewis to be able to walk you through the results of the OHM traffic study.
Mr. Lewis.
Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Hull from OHM Advisors, who is was actually the one that did the majority of the work on this study. So we thought it was appropriate to bring her here. She's going to focus on basically the results of the analysis fairly quickly on that one, and then we've set aside some time for questions about some of the specifics. So I'll let her take the lead, but I'll be standing right by in case you have any other questions that are more of a broader nature on the project at large. But Lauren, here's the clicker for you. I think you can advance the slides if you'd like.
Awesome.
All right, it's all
All
yours.
right.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. So as part of OHM, we conducted kind of this two-component study. So we looked at a one-way to two-way conversion study of First and Front Streets, which is one way under existing conditions. And the second component of the study was looking at the cross-section of Monroe. So kind of jumping over to this slide, this is our study area outlined in white. So we've got First and Front Streets from Harrison over to Macomb, and then we're looking at Monroe from 3rd to Elm Streets. Kind of our study process, so we started off by collecting traffic volume data. This included signal timing, traffic counts, so at all the intersections within that study area for kind of our AM peaks, which is like your morning rush hour, and your PM peak, which is like your after work rush hour. Once we got that existing data, we went ahead and put it into our modeling software, which is called Synchro. And it kind of gives us existing conditions, and we can look at how things are operating, what delay we kind of have, what intersections aren't doing so well, that sort of a thing. Once we have existing conditions, which we used 2023 when the study started, we went over and did our future conditions, which we went 20 years out into the future, so 2043. There was an 8% traffic increase on all the roads. Excuse me, there's a 5% increase on all the roads, and then we used 8% for First Street. So after we got our existing and future conditions, we kind of looked at some different alternatives, which I'll get into in a minute here, and then based on that, provided some recommendations. All right, so looking at First and Front Street, this worked great under existing conditions one way, but when we tried to go two-way, it didn't turn out so good. So we had to come up with a couple different alternatives here. So our first alternative is kind of these two T intersections, or offset intersections, if you will. We were asked to extend the center left turn lane down, so we did that a little bit. And then as you can see, you got Harrison and Front Street would be under stop control, while First Street remains uncontrolled. We saw acceptable operations, which is always a good thing. And then we're able to use a lot of existing pavement, which is going to reduce costs. So this is a very good and viable alternative. Alternative 2 is what we call our dead end option. So essentially Front Street just dead ends and no longer connects to First Street, excuse me. So you still have Harrison there, which would be under stop control. First Street is uncontrolled. And then again, we saw mostly acceptable operations, and I say mostly because more traffic had to shift onto First since Front Street dead ends. So there's a little bit more traffic, a little bit more delay there. Again, you're able to use a lot of your existing pavement, which is good. So in our last alternative for this intersection is a roundabout. So you have a single lane kind of going around, and then you have 5 approaches, which ties into that parking lot to the north. We saw acceptable operations, and roundabouts usually help kind of even out all of your approaches, so you're not having one approach with a ton of delay. So that was nice with this one. The only unfortunate thing, if you will, is it would require a complete reconstruction, which is a little bit expensive. This is kind of just a quick little breakdown of what we call level of service. So it's ranged from A to F. So basically, like in school, F is failing, A is passing. The only difference is that in school you aim for that A. In reality, we usually aim for kind of a C or D. If we get A, great, but if we don't, that's okay. Here we got A for all, which is great. And yeah, just our different peaks, different alternatives, that kind of thing. So then jumping over to Monroe Street. So I should note for all these alternatives, this was with the two-way conversion study. So alternative 1 remains with your 5-lane cross-section, but first and front switch to two-way. Those pink areas are designated for parking, and you'll see on a couple of slides in the future, those green are for restoration areas. We added that northbound left turn lane to First Street. However, we did not add a southbound left turn lane to Front Street. There's a little bit of restriction there with space, and we were maintaining the bridge as 4 lanes. So that's why that wasn't added. And we saw operationally that it wasn't really needed and that traffic could shift south to First and be fine. Alternative 2, we shift to a 4-lane cross section. So you're removing that center left turn lane, providing 2 lanes in each direction. The only kind of problem with this one is that you're now sharing your through and left turns. So that can lead to some increase in crashes like rear ends and side swipes. So there's a little bit of a safety concern here, but operationally it was fine. And then our last alternative for this one was a 3-lane cross section. So you have 1 lane in each direction with a center left turn lane. And again, we're maintaining those 4 lanes over the bridge. Again, similar to before, this is kind of your breakdown of different level of service. The 3-lane was kind of the most problematic of these. Those are highlighted mainly in yellow. And then this is just at Front Street and Monroe. And kind of a quick little summary here. So for First and Front Streets, all the alternatives are acceptable, but the dead end does have some challenges with it, like different maintenance. It does just dead end, so traffic might have to get rerouted a little bit, that kind of thing. So we do kind of recommend doing alternative 1 or 3, and then there's costs associated with that. So alternative 1, as you can see, is roughly $658,000. Alternative 2, $625,000, and then your roundabout alternative 3, $983,000. And then jumping over to Monroe Street, it's a 4-lane, has some safety issues with it. Your 3-lane has some operational issues. Additionally, when you're changing these signals, they're kind of owned and maintained by MDOT, so they're probably going to want kind of an extensive study there. So it's not like a definite no, but there's going to have to be more work that goes into it there. I know I went through that pretty fast. So if you have any questions, let me know.
So there's a lot of information. I know we received it as well, and I think there's a broader report that it has a lot of the details on the LOS and ratings and different data that we probably should share with council at some point soon as we start to have this conversation about alternatives on the conversion of 1-ways to 2-ways, and discussion has been with council. So I'll see if there's any questions to start and go from there. Brian.
Thank you, Your Honor. I know that we still have a lot of things to sort out as far as how we're going to have trash, traffic, etc. coming through the various, like for instance, the bars have the trucks coming down and things like supply drop-offs, so to speak. And those are things we haven't figured out, or have we thought about those?
I'll jump in here because I know that's why we're tag teaming this a little bit. She's operations and I've kind of a broader view on that one. I know that was one of the things when we did the downtown master plan back in 2018 that was talked about, that there may need to be some parking and some loading zone considerations given, particularly if it went to 2-way. And I know exactly what you're talking about, Councilman. Right now you have 2 lanes, and if a truck parks and delivers in the middle of the day, traffic just goes around it. That'll be a lot more difficult to have happen when you've only got 1 single lane in each direction. Operationally, I don't think I'd have to ask Lauren if she felt that they modeled that. I don't think we modeled the impacts of a vehicle parked and just standing for a half an hour. I think this is more of a free flow kind of thing. So that is where you do get into a few of the operational challenges that we will have to figure out a way to manage. But the downtown master plan called out ways that could be managed. but those are some of the next steps. We didn't want to go crashing off in one direction until we had a direction from council as far as which elements of this you wanted to pursue.
No, I understand. I'm just worried about us putting the cart before the horse. That's anyway. Because we get into a situation where we decide, hey, we want to do the two-way traffic. All of a sudden, we don't have a plan for where these vehicles are going to stop. Real solid, thorough plan. That's what I'm really.
Well, and I think with council direction, if council decides to proceed forward with the two-way conversion, that would be done in tandem too, where we would start immediately looking at those areas and whether there needs to be, for example, on your block, is there one bay that needs to be just for loading and unloading? Or are there time restrictions in that bay where we basically have to take some operational control downtown and say there is to be no loading except between 5 and 7:30 a.m. or something like that?
What I'm basically saying is that I want to make sure that if we choose one of these options, say the roundabout or whichever one we choose, a lot of it can be based off of what we factor into it. For instance, where we're going to open these bays up, where it's hard to make a decision on which one of these elements we want to take until we find out what exactly we're going to do prior to that. If you understand what I'm saying.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
If I may, and I think the whole purpose is OHM, what they did was a traffic study. They looked at, is it feasible? Will traffic be able to handle if we do the two-way there and in the different lane options on Monroe Street? And that's all we asked of OHM. We didn't ask them to dig into all these other items. This was strictly the traffic study. And I think it's important because from a very basic standpoint, we want to know what is feasible. Would this work? And that's with the volumes of traffic that we get currently. Where is the huge delays going to happen? Are we cognizant of those delays? Do we, from a business standpoint, do we not mind a delay on Monroe Street? And it's those kind of decisions that I think that's why we're presenting this data now in a work session. And then we'll be seeking your input of, okay, what is your feeling now? And I know that we have the master plan that was from 2017-18 and the whole idea and design of what we're looking for in our downtown. But I also am cognizant is the data from the business owners, et cetera, that's dated too. Does our businesses want that? Is it beneficial for our business district and the development of the downtown? Because maybe things are different after COVID, and maybe things are different than that. And I think that there's more work we will have to do to ascertain, is this what is feasible with businesses of today? And I think the purpose of what we're doing here is seeking your guidance based on the traffic study, understanding that all of these can be done. All of this can be done from a traffic study. Yes, it would have been different if she said, yeah, there's no way that on Front Street you could have two-way. Because of just the the design and dimensions and the volume of traffic. She said, yeah, that's rated an F for the delays and traffic feasibility to travel through there. Okay, that would be important to know if that's not even feasible with our current traffic. But we're just hoping that through the work session and your communication with us after this, to give us the direction that you want us to pursue next, because that helps us drive the next phase of, okay, what more information do we need to know and be able to research, put it together, and bring back to council.
A couple other little minor things that I just, if I may, we didn't really mention it, but I think it kind of goes without saying. We're looking at converting the block of Washington and Cass Street to two-way traffic as well. But those were such a minor part of the study that we didn't model multiple options. So it's presumed that if First and Front were to go two-way, we would also look at the remaining block of Cass between First and Front and Washington between First and Front. We'd make the whole network two-way. So I wanted to bring that up. It wasn't asked, but just so that it's clear we're doing that. And we did, besides the analysis, we did ask OHM to provide us with that order of magnitude cost that you saw on there. Please keep in mind, though, that some of those costs are pretty fluid, and it depends a little bit on the year we're doing it, too. Lauren talked about the signal costs on there. Threw up a number, which I don't know if you caught it, $350,000 per intersection. That's not implying that that's all city cost. But as you might guess, if we're converting these streets from one-way to two-way, there's a new signal direction that's not there now. So MDOT would insist that we realign the traffic signals. And at that point, we'd probably modernize those intersections and do the mast arms that we've done and authorized in other places. That $350,000 is not what I believe the city's cost would be, but we don't know yet what the city's cost would be, because we'd obviously fight to say, well, there are signals and you would normally be modernizing them anyway, so some of that's on you. But I think it's a fair statement to say that probably half or a little more of that might fall on us for the modification. So just some numbers to keep in mind from that standpoint. Your two-way conversion is obviously going to be well over $1 million. But beyond that, we haven't really dug into the nitty-gritty of it. I think you're probably closer to 2 out the door, but those are just things to keep in mind for order of magnitude.
Andrew, let me back up until we hit some data, please. I'm looking for the Monroe Street slides. You can hit Front Street, but I think that what we learned from Front Street was that there wasn't much there. That everything was acceptable, but nothing really outperformed existing conditions. I should turn on a microphone, that might help. In here, I'm seeing that the 5-lane option outperforms existing conditions. Is that the only one? Help summarize this for me.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. And that would be the only scenario among these that outperforms existing conditions. And the 5-lane scenario also allows is the one that allows for the most limited additional parking, and I don't think had any plans for non-motorized traffic on the roadway.
Correct.
As well.
Yep.
Did you guys account for any increased throughput for non-motorized traffic, scooters or bicycles on the road, but not in the traffic lanes themselves?
No, our simulation is mainly just for vehicles, and then you can add pedestrians or bicyclists at intersections, but you can't necessarily add them like throughout your network, if that makes sense.
You can add them at intersections, but you can't add them throughout. So I can only tell how many people are going past that, not how many the network can support.
Correct. You could say there are 5 pedestrians crossing the south leg, but that's all you can do at the intersection.
Gotcha. It's increasingly easy to justify non-motorized transportation plans as we are able to say that it is alleviating traffic from vehicular traffic, getting off the roadways. So if people take a bike to work instead of a car, all of a sudden investing in non-motorized transportation makes sense because there's less infrastructure for us to maintain. We're still getting the same throughput and providing the same utility to our residents. But if there's the same vehicular traffic, the non-motorized transportation systems become just an expensive add-on, is more of a recreational program if it's not displacing vehicular traffic that's otherwise needing to take place. As we talk about, and I know that Director Lewis and City Manager Robinson discussed whether or not we wanted to pursue the two-way conversion plan overall. There do seem to be, in some scenarios, benefits of doing that, but I'm not overly offended by the system that we have at this point in time. But I mean, that's why we're doing this, to see, first of all, whether it would be feasible, and then what the potential benefits are. So I'm very happy to be persuaded, but those are my thoughts at this time.
He's smiling and laughing. Andrew makes a great point. It's, what the intent and purpose is when we started this. And I see there's many transitions across the many communities, much like ours, that are transforming the traffic flow because, as I said, vehicular traffic that needs to take place. And that's always been the discussion here, as I recall, is many people come through Monroe Street because they simply are passing through and have no intention of stopping. So the question is we want to continue that, or are we trying to transform the transportation into the community that meets all needs, but also manages the needs of what the intent and desire is for traffic? there's alternative paths, whether it be telegraph and others, that if it's simply wanting to go north to south. East to west is a little more difficult in our community. We know that, and I think that's part of the discussion that why the conversion from one-way to two-way was initiated long ago and continues long before all of us were here. Of at some point it got changed to one-way, and I think that's what most everybody remembers. And the two-way has long been forgotten. But I'll get to next steps because I think where some of that information is important. I look at I'll just go kind of through those slides you had there. I won't get into the LOS. I think that there's a lot of detail in the full report as well, but the geometric improvements on front and first, I think we've pretty much, you said was not recommended number 2. I think it would be a challenge if we put a dead end, because I think it just starts to separate things instead of making it more inclusive to move both traffic and individuals. So I understand why that's probably not high on the list. The other 2 appear to both work. I think also when we look at these, we really should be looking at how we manage the traffic flow, not just that it can flow and meet all the numbers by scale. On the T intersection, I think there's more, I'll just say more curb cuts than there needs to be. I think that you're asking for left turns and left turn lane. I think that currently that's the design, and other than making it come in a different way off of front to first and the 2 ways to go. When I look at as you go through that intersection, the KSC, and then of course in the post office and what they're used for. I know this is all preliminary because we talk about left turns into the post office. That's actually an exit, not an entrance, so that's not a factor. But then how they exit is whether they turn left or not. Those are other discussions. I also think that wasn't part of this study, but we should be considering is come up, and we know because if anybody drives past the post office, when you get to Smith Street, there's a turn lane for you to go into the post office, but no way to turn left. We tried that, and we got a lot of pushback from that. But I think how we extend from the post office, where this study ends, up until Smith Street regarding left turns really should be addressed. And it's not in this study, I understand, but we should take that in consideration, how people are maneuvering on front to Smith. The option or the alternative 3, which is the roundabout, I think it's a flow. It's people are getting used to them, whether they support them or not. It's a matter of managing the flow of traffic to eliminate potential crashes and severity of crashes. As I looked at this, I was only kind of I thought about was if we're having left turns out of the post office is where the crosswalk is for the pedestrians is awful close. It's coming the side near the roundabout. It's just something else to think about as we move forward. And I know that'll come out in the long-term final designs, I will say. But one thing it does direct one access point in and out of the KFC, which then of course eliminates the one, but I couldn't see how we can be making left turns out of that and just flowing in like alternative to the T intersection. Those are just some first thoughts. I think truck traffic was mentioned, delivery. I agree. I think it's going to take the discussions before in the next steps of how are we going to manage that and how are we going to manage our collection of trash, how are we going to manage those things before we even start to pick a design and final decision on 1 or 2 way. First is it feasible and should we be considering 2-way traffic? I think we need to get information from our business owners and others. And this was attempted years ago, and I think that before we had the message out, it was all the messages that were coming in of why it didn't work. And there were some that were not factual, but yet I understand we're going to get calls from people. And when Fermi evacuation route came in to be an obstacle, that's not an evacuation route to begin with. But those type of things, I think we should stay factual to what the intent is. Do we look at the non-motorized? Because that's why many communities that are transforming from 1-ways to 2-ways and having the term is used, road diets, is to manage that. Because we're all currently, I think we have an increase of non-motorized, especially the e-bikes that are currently coming through town and currently going down the sidewalks. And we know that that's being responded to by public safety, but it's still a concern. If we don't account for it, then we should not expect anything to be different than what it currently is. So I think we have to take all these things into consideration before we decide, but that's just one of many. The delivery trucks, I agree. I've seen them where you have to make space for them to do, and where they can stop, and you have to also manage the time in which it's done, and it's done elsewhere. Just today, I was driving. One was downtown, and one was just near the downtown. 2 FedEx cars that were simply stopped in the middle of the street and taking their time to do what they were doing. I think we have to provide space for that to occur, and it may not be right in front of the business. We'd make space for them to be able to make their deliveries and not disrupt the traffic flow. So there's a lot that could be concerned of how we go about the process. I think, and of course, if the council and the community are looking for this as a transformation for traffic flow and services and managing, then that's where we should start, and also get the input from the community about some of the discussions that are going on here about concerns of how do we address this topic. And we're not going to think of them all, and that's why we need to have some outreach to have that discussion. So that's just my thoughts to begin with. Brian?
Yeah, probably more of a question for Patrick, but question is regarding Monroe Street. MDOT is the state highway, correct? So
Yep.
they have a lot to say as to what's going to go on there. Correct me if I'm wrong.
They would have ultimate decision on what to say. However, I think in the last 10 years, they've made some strides in being a little more open to the conversation than they were 10 years ago. I can't say for sure exactly what form it would take, but yes, they'll have to be involved regardless of what we do. Two-way conversion, that would be involved with the signals. Obviously, any geometric changes on Monroe Street, they will want to review this study in very, very thorough detail.
And is M50 still going down that portion of Front Street
No.
to West Front?
Nope, not since 2006. I can't believe it's been that long either. We took that back from them in 2006.
So what is officially M50 and how's
Stops
it-
at Telegraph. That's it.
That's it. So downtown Monroe, it has no place whatsoever. So it ends at North Dixie and Elm?
M50 ends at US 24 and goes west. There is no longer any M50 connection east of Telegraph.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and that was by design. We wanted to control those routes. I will say it's been talked about before. There's a master plan going back 35 years, which talks about the potential of turning back M125. MDOT, technically, some of the reports consider it surplus trunk line because it was the old US 25, and it doesn't actually even connect to an Ohio route when you get across the state line. However, any discussions about a turn back would have to also involve the Monroe County Road Commission. Because they would have to take their portion of the route back. MDOT's not going to let us turn ours back to local control and have it be 125 outside the city limits. So that would be a pretty big lift. But obviously, if we were to take back jurisdictional control, we could do whatever we wanted.
But then we'd be responsible to take care of it as well.
That is correct. It's a fairly expensive and complicated asset. But so anyway, those are big, long-ranging stuff. I didn't want to throw that on your plate tonight, but it is MDOT's jurisdiction.
Just it's part of the thought process of which way we go, or if we do actually go with it, some of these alternatives here.
Yeah.
I just want to plug all those things in and see what works best.
I wish I could have a crystal ball and could tell you exactly how long, what process, what objections they might have, and what other obstacles they might throw. And I think that's a fairly, it's a winding road, but I think the road is shorter than it was 10 years ago, for what that's worth.
Brian, a couple follow-ups. I think those are great questions. I know that in the past 5 years or so, there's been some communities across Michigan, very similar type configurations and types of M roads that have made the convergence. So MDOT is a little more receptive to the conversation, how they get there. So it might be something we can get from the Michigan Municipal League. They would have those examples as a community. We could, look at how they were able to work through some of those items. instead of trying to reinvent how we're going to do this, and maybe some of that communications plan that they had would have been might be beneficial as well. On the trucks, yep, M50 stops at Telegraph Road. However, it doesn't not mean that we still have local truck traffic because they do local deliveries. That's permissible, but then that also becomes a communication and compliance and then enforcement issue that goes to the public safety department, because we know that we still have those that they look at their phone, GPS or whatever it is, and they just come right down where the old M50 is, because we don't manage the state's network of information or interstate of people that think they still can get off at any one of the roads and come down, Dixie or
Google still
wherever,
shows it.
Pleasant. Well, they just
I don't know
show
how
up.
to get it taken off of there. Google
Right.
still shows it, the old route.
But there again, I always say that you can drive a similar communication back, because there's no better communication than truckers in their own trucks and their own communication system, because they know how to talk to each other and they will advise whether it's permissible or not. But those are way down the road. I think that the next steps are going to be for working with administration and a follow-up with council. Who and how do we move the conversation forward? And then how does that fit with what, at least what we've been provided at this point? There's data collection I think we can get around the state that might be beneficial, not only in potential, I'll say discussion points with the community, but also how we plan for it, if we get to that point.
We
And
just
when.
mostly
And
wanted
when.
to introduce it tonight and
Okay.
put it out there for your discussion, say, we're here, it's feasible. Clearly, the two-way operation has no adverse impacts on the first and front intersection. So I think we'll just be awaiting your direction as far as how you'd like us to proceed, and we'll be ready to do that and continue to engage OHM for the more detailed geometric design and some other things that we're gonna lean on them to assist us with. But we'll take those next steps when council is ready. Mr. Robinson, anything I missed?
I think what we'll do is we have some work on our own too, to find examples, samples. People have gone through this in the past or in recent years. Reach out to those cities, find out how it worked, how it's worked, and actually, is it working out? Has it been successful? Has it not been successful? And those things are also things we will bring forward to you, so you have that information as well. So that as we get ultimately to the discussion is, okay, are we serious about this? Is this something we're going to do and we're going to start looking at it for CIP projects and all these other kind of projects? Then say go, and we'll start getting the experts involved in exactly how we get it done. But I think most important, we want to make sure that this council, even though it's in the master plan from 17-8, I want to make sure that this council, that this is what you want us to do and this is the path that you prefer, based on what we can get back from feedback from our residences and businesses alike.
Okay, if there's no other questions, Patrick, thank you. Lauren, thanks for being here. Thank you, appreciate it much.
Imagine those are your notes.
Anything further this evening for the work session or comments I'll say from the council on the agenda? If they have any questions, we have time.
I don't have any items on these two items, no items to bring forward unless council has anything on tonight's agenda they would like to discuss ahead of time.
Any items from council in preparation for the council meeting? Items that you may want to have some clarity before, or items that administration be prepared for as we get into the meeting? Andrew?
We have representatives from the Public Safety Department here for item 4677.
The grant recognition? Yeah. Directors, he looks like he's nodding yes.
No, you're fine. I don't want to steal your thunder. It's just something that seems like none of us have an issue with, and we could move to the consent agenda. But if we want to, let's celebrate the successes.
Yeah.
So by all means, let's keep it where it is.
Yeah, I think there's a couple items on the council action items. I think that will lend to some conversation or comment from council, which should be, I think, beneficial. Some of those opportunities that are being presented there, like as you said, Andrew, with the grant recognition, the MOU, invoice to support training for youth, those type of things.
Some of the items, especially recently, that are on the council action are not there because they're controversial issues that require discussion, but because we want to recognize people, and I understand that.
Yep. Brian?
Thank you, Your Honor. Are there any additions, subtractions that we should be aware of? Anything you can think of that we have to amend the agenda with or do?
No, I have no council agenda amendments at all tonight.
Mark, anything that you may have this evening? All right. So I think we're done. All right, this time I'll close the council work session, and we have about 25 minutes, 24 minutes. Thanks. We'll call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Present.
Felder? Hader? Stilgrave? Vining? Jermaine? Mayor Clark?
Present. I'd ask we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We have faith and hope in each other and our city. We ask for your guidance in the decisions that are made here this evening. We ask that you help us to work for the welfare of this community and all who call her home.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's in order. Clerk, first item, please.
The next item is the approval of the regular agenda.
Manager Robinson, no additions or deletions from the meeting, is that correct?
I have no adjustments to the agenda.
Very good. Any items on the, any adjustments from council? Seeing none. Councilman Lamore?
Your Honor, I make a motion that we keep the agenda as written.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder to approve the regular agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hader? Stilgrave? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for approval of payments, the amount is $1,171,878.86. 171,878.86.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Items on the consent agenda. Seeing none, motion would be in order. Councilman Felder?
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hader? Stilgrave? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Next item, please.
So we have nothing under presentations, communications, or public hearings, so we'll move to council action. The next item is item 4650, authorization to enter into agreement with Flock Safety.
Thank you. Manager Robinson?
Your Honor, is during the work session, we had Mr. DeShane from Flock here and our Director Tolstead make the presentation about our Flock camera system that we're proposing. And we're asking today, seeking authorization from City Council to allow the agreement to go forward in the amount of $108,750 for the 2-year initial agreement. And they take care of all of the permits and installation of all of the cameras.
Any questions from council? Before we take a motion, for those that may have not been here or watched the council work session, there was, prior to tonight's meeting, there was a presentation from Public Safety Director Tolstead, as well as the representative from Flock Safety regarding this. So there's some great information there that's available as well. With that, any comments from Councilman Lamore, if there's any other comments?
Making a motion, Your Honor. Make a motion to authorize the Public Safety Director to sign the agreement with Flock Safety in the amount of $108,750 to install cameras with Flock OS Advanced and adopt the resolution allowing Flock to act on behalf of the City of Monroe to obtain Michigan Department of Transportation permits to install the cameras with all services to be provided July 1st, 2024 or later.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Hader on item 4650, authorization to enter into an agreement with Flock Safety. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hader? Stilgrave? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 4677, grant recognition for PPE for firefighters from the state of Michigan.
Manager Robinson?
Your Honor, I'd like to invite Director Tolstead to explain how this grant came forward. and the excellent opportunity it is for our firefighters to receive more equipment.
Thank you. Director Tolstead.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, City Council, Clerk Lavoy, Director Chad Tolsted. This was brought to me, this grant opportunity was brought to me just this past week by members of the fire department that came across this during one of their union meetings that presented this opportunity from the state. Then put it back in their laps to say, hey, what does this mean for us? Do we have any kind of match on this process? This is to fund a second set of turnout gear for all full-time firefighters. I did inquire about public safety officers. They do not qualify for this program as well. The reason why we like a second set of turnout gear is when we do fight fire, that gear gets dirty, it gets wet, and a second set of gear automatically turns us out till we're ready to respond immediately again. When the parameters of this is $3,500 per full-time firefighter. When we priced it out, and that was when your packet as well, roughly we're looking at about 200 extra to get them outfitted. That's for a coat and pants as well for turnout gear per member, which times 17 is $3,400. I'm not requesting any additional funds that would be taken out of just our operating equipment as well. But that's the information on the grant recognition to apply to the state.
Thank you. Any questions for the director? Seeing none, a motion be in order. Councilman Hader?
Yep. Would like to make a motion to grant authorization to the Director of Public Safety, submit the grant application for firefighter turnout gear 2024 to the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity Bureau of Administration Services for the state of Michigan.
Motion by Councilman Hader, supported by Councilwoman Stelgrave. The item 4677, the grant recognition for PPE for firefighters from the state of Michigan. Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hader? Stilgrave? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 4676, Memorandum of Understanding with the Port of Monroe and the Monroe County Sheriff's Office.
Director Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor. We're looking to ask council to authorize the Director of Public Safety to sign an MOU with the Port of Monroe and the Monroe County Sheriff's Office outlining the partnership which will be utilized for the rescue boat grant. And I'd like to ask Attorney Matt Buds he would like to kind of talk a little more about it and throw a disclaimer in there.
And if you would, Mr. Buds.
Your Honor, I would just like to say, it's noted in the fact sheet, but I always say when there's something between the port and the city, just a reminder that I do the legal work for both. This is one that I believe all parties are on the same page, so I don't see there being any conflict. I think that this is moving forward, something that's for the benefit of both the port and the city and in the best interest of both, but happy to answer any questions about any of that and worked with Director Lamar and Director Tolstead to put together that MOU or review it upon their drafting it. Thank you.
So I'll ask if there's any comments from council for Attorney Buds regarding the agreement, but also his role. If not, Councilman Lamore.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the Public Safety Director to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Port of Monroe and Monroe County Sheriff's Office outlining the partnership which will be utilized for the rescue boat grant.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stelgrave on item 4676, a memorandum of understanding with the Port of Monroe and Monroe County Sheriff's Office. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hader? Stilgrave? Mayor Clark?
Next item, please.
The next item is item 4674, authorization to invoice Dundee High School for 10 older model SCBA's.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. In this situation, our Public Safety Department is seeking to sell 10 of our older self-contained breathing apparatus units that are currently being stored to Dundee High School, who's receiving a grant for this for training. I'd like to invite Director Tolstead to kind of explain how that came to be.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Honorable Mayor, City Council Member Chad Tolstead, your Director of Public Safety. What Mr. Robinson laid out is exactly kind of how it was brought forth. My fire commander, Scott Smiley, brought this forth to me, said Dundee, the trainer out there at Dundee knew we had these old packs that were no longer in service. that we just had in so much, so to speak, in storage that we were utilizing some of them for training as well. Said, hey, we have a program out here. Those packs fit the criteria. We would give you $500 per pack with a couple bottles as well. We vetted that out with our vendor, which is West Shore Fire. Said, what would something like this go for? And we told him we were getting about $500. He said, that's basically what an older pack like this would go for. So we're getting a fair marketable value for them. Plus, they're going to a local training school for localized in Dundee. I'm not overly familiar with the program, but these type of packs would be a great use to them, having gone through the training myself.
Questions for Director Tolstead? Councilman Hayter?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the Director of Public Safety to sell 10 SCBA's to the Dundee High School, to allow the Finance Director to amend the budget to allow the proceeds to be budgeted for fire department operating equipment, and to allow unspent funds from the sale to carry over from 2023-2024 to fiscal year 2024-2025 fiscal year.
It's motion by Councilman Hayter, supported by Councilman Lamore on item 4674, the authorization to invoice Dundee High School for the 10 older model SCBA's. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Hayter?
Yes.
Stilgrave? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 4675, revocation of obsolete property rehabilitation abatement for 49 South Monroe Street.
Thank you. City Manager Robinson?
Yes, Your Honor and Council, as you know, 49 South Monroe Street suffered a fire that was devastating to the top floor that they were in the process of trying to renovate and turn into apartments. We had previously authorized them the obsolete property rehabilitation abatement for those properties. And in dealing with the owner, he said that portion of rehabilitating and doing the fourth floor, he is going to redo the building, but only the 3 floors. And the plans to do the fourth floor are on hold indefinitely until he makes that decision. And so it makes this resolution that we allowed them to get this special abatement, and now we have a resolution to dissolve that abatement that we had already put forth.
For the City Manager? If none, question, go ahead, Councilman Lamore.
Yeah, in the future, if he does plan on making any improvements to the fourth floor, can you come back to us and request the same thing?
Back at a later time and with the same process he did prior.
Okay. With that, I'll just make a motion to approve the resolution revoking approval of the obsolete property rehabilitation abatement for fourth floor renovations at 49 South Monroe Street.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave on item 4675, the revocation of the obsolete property rehabilitation abatement for 49 South Monroe Street. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hayter? Stilgrave? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 4666, 2024 Concrete Paving Program Bid Award.
Yes, Your
Manager
Honor.
Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor and Council, I'd like to invite Director Patrick Lewis. This is a big expense for the city, and I think it's appropriate that he explains.
Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. Always happy to come before you with some good news. The good news is our Concrete Streets program, which consists of not all of our streets. We got the first 3 packaged and wanted to get them out as fast as we could. We still have 2 smaller streets that we're looking at doing as a potential change order to this in a month or so when design's ready, that also have a water main with them. But the 3 streets that we packaged constitute the majority of our program. Those are John Rolfe Drive between Theodore and West Lorraine, Ross Drive between Riverside and Richards, and West Lorraine from Borges to Monroe Street. That one, we've taken quite a few complaints about that. And we were 16% under the engineer's estimate on this. So GV Cement has performed work for us quite a bit. They were our 2022 concrete contractor. They've done our sidewalk program for the last 4 years. They're actually ready to start next Tuesday if we award the contract tonight. So that's always a plus as well, so we can start getting these underway in favorable weather. So there will be some additional projects that I'll be bringing to you kind of one at a time, because we got a little bit of a late start on design since last year was such a big year for us. But we wanted to get these out. These will include, I want to point out, new storm sewer on the entire length of John, Rolfe, and Ross, because we are now, as a city policy, putting in storm sewer and leads to every home on all streets that we reconstruct to allow for the wastewater department's footing drain disconnect program to access something easily, so those residents don't have to come back through and tear the street up. So we're, again, another example of how our departments are working in tandem to make sure that we're saving money and minimizing the inconvenience that residents have when it's time for them to improve their facilities as well. So I think I'll leave it there unless there are any questions.
Any questions, Councilman Felder?
Yes, due to lead and copper rules, we are under obligations from the state to replace a certain percentage of lead and galvanized pipe in the service lines to the homes as well. Are we coordinating those projects, of course, for cost efficiency purposes, to try and only tear up anything that we need to tear up one time?
Oh, absolutely. These 3 streets were streets that didn't have that as an issue. The Dixie Drive and Rose Street are 2 streets that we're still doing the water main on. I don't remember off the top of my head if we have any lead or galvanized services on those 2, but we're doing a lot within our overall system, I believe, in the South Monroe town site neighborhood. That'll be part of a probably $12 million package that will come later this summer. So a lot of this year's water main work is occurring just outside the city limits in Patterson Gardens subdivision and South Monroe town site. We just have a couple of smaller water main projects within the city this year. But yes, in the past 5 or 6 years in particular, absolutely, we've tracked a little bit ahead of our requirements just by having such long runs. So Barry and I have worked together for 20 years, and we have more. Well, I mean, we've worked together as department heads for 20 years, organizing this to the point where sometimes we get frustrated about how long things take to get to completion. But we're doing it the right way, and I think we're starting to see those impacts.
You guys are awesome. Thank you, Director.
Sure, appreciate it.
More, you have a comment?
Yes, yeah, one more question regarding you said South Monroe Town Site, you're going to be doing the lines there.
Yes.
The street rehabilitation project will be carried out by Monroe Township, or is that something we're responsible for?
That's not, the project will be responsible for any restoration. Those won't necessarily involve full street tear-outs. The ones so any work would be borne by the water department on that one. We coordinate our projects more than anything else here. It's, Barry's departments will pay their share of the cost attributed to their utility, but typically the way this process goes on the city ones, unless it's an area that he's had a ton of breaks, is that I'll sit down with our list back in July or August and say, these are the streets I'm considering for next year. What needs do you have? And Barry will do his cost estimates. He'll look at those, say we've had X number of breaks. That water main's 85 years old, so when you do the street, replace the water line. And that's typically how the process works. I do lead it because historically the city has not had as much money to work with as Barry has. Although with the passage of our street millage, it's getting a little more equal to where sometimes I'll delay a street a year or two, sometimes he'll delay a water project a year or two so that we can get those schedules to sync up.
Yeah, my question was more concerning the street rehabilitation.
Yes.
If it's in town site, because it's not in the city of Monroe. That was the only question I had. If it was necessary.
It shouldn't be as necessary. We try to keep the water mains there outside of the road pavement, and we generally try to do that here as well whenever we can. But yes, if they were doing a full-scale resurfacing, then yeah, they would be paying the cost to do a full resurfacing. But if we're just patching the trenches where it crosses intersections and things like that, that would be project cost.
Okay, and that would come from the water funds?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Any other questions or comments? So I know that when the streets are in these locations, there's other street projects that are being done this year as well. I know that Councilman Moore, myself, as well as the staff had received calls regarding West Lorraine, and those are decisions that made even a year prior to streets we're looking at already for next year and our 5-year master planning that we have for our capital improvements. So while some of those adjust as we go, that So I just bring that up only because I know there's just been calls and we'll be looking forward to seeing that. I think Councilman Felder's comment about on the lead replacement lines and the footer drain separation, the storm sewers are now a part of what we look at. We have many locations in the city that storm sewers weren't put in when they were built. And now we try to figure out how do we drain to those and how do we make it so it's making removal of whether it be basement flooding or just flooding in yards and that. So I think that all these coordination, I think, is well pointed out here. So
So that's all I have, Your Honor.
very good.
Thanks.
Thanks. Other questions or comments? And not a motion will be in order. Or Councilman,
Motion that a contract for the 2024 concrete paving program be awarded to GV Cement Contracting Company in the amount of $1,224,875.65, that a total of $1,415,000 be encumbered to include a 15% contingency, that the mayor and clerk treasurer be authorized to execute the contracts on behalf of the city, and that the director of finance be authorized to set up any necessary accounts, make any necessary budget amendments, and to appropriate funds to the correct fiscal year.
Support.
motion by Councilman Moore, support by Councilman Hayter on item 4666, the 2024 concrete paving program bid award. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Hayter? Stillgrave? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
I have no further items this evening, Your Honor.
Okay, it is May, so Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. One comment, I was fortunate enough to be here this morning when we had three public safety officers take the oath of office. It is my distinct pleasure to see that happening because I believe our public safety department here in Monroe is one of the best in the state, if not the best, and it's only getting better. I see the three recruits that we signed up today were absolutely fantastic, and I look forward to seeing them on the streets and helping out the citizens of Monroe. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. Had a wonderful time at the NLC 100-year anniversary, about 2 weeks ago now it was. The breakfast that we had at the Michigan Wine and Beer Portal was awesome, and it was great to see Chairman Egan come out and promote the film again and the work that Cody is doing. I think integrating the river with the restoration story of our entire community is a solid move, and I think that those goes hand in hand, both in terms of timeline and in terms of effort and the potential impact that they have for our community. So it was wonderful to see that and be a part of that. And thank you to the staff members who were able to put that on. Last Tuesday, I participated as an advocate for the Creative Michigan Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C. We attended that virtually, and we met with Senator Stabenow and Senator Peters' office talking about the impact that the arts and culture industry has on the state and the communities of our state. Over 120,000 jobs and $18.4 billion across the state of Michigan is generated by arts and culture each and every year. And it was wonderful to be able to sit down with both of their offices and talk about the wonderful opportunities that those industries are able to bring here into our community, and that they have economic ramifications in addition to the intangible benefits that they provide in making our communities in Michigan a wonderful place to live. And we hope that they continue their efforts in supporting those programs. And on Friday, I sat in on the committee, the MML Economic Development and Land Use Committee, that was reviewing legislation in those two fields, pending legislation at the legislature, to provide recommendations and endorsements of certain bills. I know that I'm not the only member of council who participates in these sort of regional initiatives, and we need to make sure that we aren't taking the roles and our participation in these spaces for granted. It's valuable for the residents to have advocates in the room for them who are arguing on their behalf. And I think that that's a very valuable thing in this community that we should do more of. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have for this evening.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Hayter.
Yep, just two things. One, I'd like to congratulate Officers LaFleur, Arquette, and Beard, and welcome them to our public safety department. And I'd like to congratulate the 5 Labor Hall of Fame inductees that went in last week also. So congratulations to them.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stelgrave.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would also like to congratulate our new officers. I'm looking forward to seeing them as well. Also, the jazz band will play this Thursday night at St. Mary's Park. And there's many events coming up. The summer concert series are now starting, so we want to keep an eye on that. And June 8th is the open air market. And although I was not able to attend the DDA's Talk the Walk, my understanding it was very well attended, as you can walk through downtown and you can see all the chalk on the sidewalk. So it's a pretty cool event. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple quick comments. First, as has already been done, my congratulations to 3 new officers that took their oath of office. I want to thank Clerk Lavoie for administering the oath of office. And at the conclusion, one of the officers, she read about what the oath was and what their position was, and it was to see her sit there and wasn't reading it. She simply spoke to everybody what that commitment in her career and for all the new officers, what that meant and how they're going to serve our community. And I wish we would have had it videotaped because I think it's something that we probably should be sharing with our community. And I think it was just great to see the new officers that are here for a purpose of serving our community. That's what law enforcement and public safety and fire department do. So I know that we'll have more in the near future. I believe fire is also searching, but we'll get there. We'll have our full complement. And my next comments are tied to this as well. Just on tonight's council action, there were 4 related public safety items that involved around both fire and police partnerships and interdepartmental coordination between fire and police. I want to thank the Commander Smiley and his staff recognizing 2 of those items came about their conversations and having awareness of our community as a whole and regionally of not only how it serves our community, but the opportunity that was taken when we know that there's youth and students in the region, in the Dundee area, that are learning about fire skills. And these instruments that we gave a partnership and sale to that use will serve a better purpose, and hopefully it'll generate those that will continue to stay in our community, and both in the city and also regionally in the county, and serve all of our communities in the public safety arena, both fire and police. It was interesting to hear the oath of office and the comments by the officers that were sworn in today about how they came to Monroe. Some had been here a long time, and some had opportunities to go elsewhere. They weren't from here. But when the opportunity was presented, they wanted to come out of the police academy to Monroe and work here. And I think that speaks well for everyone. I already talked about the coordination on street projects, and thankfully we continue that. Councilman Felder on the Michigan Municipal League, he's absolutely correct. There's many opportunities for council and staff, and I know that sometimes I get those emails and I send them off to Clerk Lavoie, I send them to the administration, knowing that they probably already received it, which they did, but I try to see how we might fit, whether it be a program of advocacy, a program of grant opportunities, and what might be the next grant that we can find funding for. I know that in the department's development with Matt Vanasacker and Mark Cochran, they're looking at those as well, and they're already looking at some of those that just recently came in. So those are my comments for this evening, and I want to thank the staff for all they're doing in the relations to what we heard. Clerk Lavoie.
I too wanted to congratulate the new officers, and I also wanted to thank Director Tolstad and Commander Wall for continuing to include the clerk treasurer in the process. It's very important. There are a lot of duties that the clerk does that we don't talk about very often. Administering the oath to the new police officers is one of the most important things that I have the great honor of doing as clerk treasurer. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. In other not so fun news about my responsibilities, taxes are out. So if you haven't received your tax form yet, or you've been having some challenges with paying online, please don't hesitate to contact our office and we'll be glad to help you out. Next meeting, I'll talk more about election things because it's already, August is already teed up and we have a lot of activity already happening. So that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Manager Robinson, comments this evening?
The only comment I have is, again, I'd like to congratulate the officers that were sworn in today. But I've just been very impressed with the way that Director Tolstad and his staff have worked to be able to fill these positions, because I know how competitive this field is, and with the number of applicants that are out there, and I think it speaks volume of the way that the director and his commanders, when they go out and they visit these police academy, the way that they present our city and the way that our officers present themselves and handle themselves on a daily basis here speaks such volumes of why people want to come here and be part of this community and this department. And I want to say thank you for the hard work you guys do. That's it.
So before I take public comments, just to follow up to what the Manager Robinson said, you know, the officers now start their career here, but they'll have field training officers. And part of that is not only coming to the administration building, but it's going to all the other departments, and the priority is the community. So yeah, those that are here and those that are watching, you'll see our new officers, and this should be the opportunity to introduce yourselves, but also get to know each other as how they're going to serve. I know that we have our community service officer who will have time with our newly sworn officers as they make their rounds and make interaction with the community. So if you see an officer you don't know, introduce yourself, and I hope they'll do the same with you. So how we get engaged in service to the community. So my comments there. With that, public comment. If there's any public comment here this evening, please come to the podium, state your name, jurisdiction of residence, and if you have any comments or questions. So I'll ask any comments from those present here this evening. Yes, sir.
Elliot James, 633 Stone Street, Monroe. I want to know when is the streets on the east end going to be worked on? Or they got plans for that this year?
That's a good question. I know that I can think back the last years were some of the streets that were done. I don't have that list, but Patrick Lewis probably has it right off the top of his head in the past, I'll say 5 years. That's a great question, because as we meet with capital improvements every year, we do it early in the year, January, February, and we plan for this year, but we also are looking to what streets are maybe next year. Sometimes it's about coordination of logistics, and of course, it's always the need of when they need to be done and which is the priorities. Right off the top of my head, I don't know which the priorities may be for the Orchard East. I'm looking to Patrick, and I'm not going to put him on the spot, but if he doesn't have it, it's a great question. And he may be able to pull up the spreadsheet, and then maybe that we come back if I don't have an answer now, which ones are planned for next year and the year to come. Our next meeting, we could come back and say, here's what we're looking at for next year. I know that's we're just getting the project started now, but it's a great question to ask.
You used up my time.
Oh, yeah, I won't use that against your time.
Okay.
In fact, I never hit the start button, so I'm going to hit start now.
The only other thing I wanted to say was I still will be sitting out in front of Town Square every Friday, this Friday and next Friday,
Yes.
for voter registration and the NAACP membership.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And I know that Clerk Lavoie, with her election and what she does, we know that there are advocates within the community, yourself, and if there's others that currently, but when we talk about getting people registered to vote, I mean, it's everybody's ability to do so, and we want to get people registered to vote as many as possible. Thank you.
Yes, and Your Honor, Mr. James has been working with me, and I've been able to help supply him and other organizations with some of the forms that they need and the instructions necessary to make sure that everything's done the proper way. So, thank you.
Other comments from those present here this evening? Seeing no further comments.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Person Lamore?
Yes.
Baker? Stilgrave? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Thank you all.